Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Coming up this week, we're going to tell you about our recent experience on a 4-night sailing on the Disney Dream on this week's episode of the Disney Cruise Line Show. The Disney Cruise Line Show is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel. Receive an exclusive gift basket and a shipboard credit up to $1,000 when you let Dreams Unlimited plan your next Disney Cruise Line vacation. You'll get the same price as booking direct with Disney, plus you'll get the assistance of a Disney Cruise Line expert to answer all your questions and help make your next Disney cruise a magical one. Get a no-obligation quote at www.dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Coming to you from the Bob Varley Studio in Orlando, Florida, I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table this week by Dreams Unlimited Travel agent Sean Falk.
Hi.
Joining us via Skype, Dreams Unlimited Travel agent Mike Fanucci.
Hello, everyone.
Editor on the Diz, and all-around great lady.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Denny Sunderly.
Hi there.
Producer, par excellence, extraordinaire, phenomenal, Mr. Craig Williams.
Ahoy, ahoy.
He's going to wait and see if he got the cut right.
Right.
Between me pausing and saying his name. But he did. He
Perfect.
did. He's on it. He's on it. Not on camera and just kind of existing in the ether in the background as Fiasco. Getting ready for the next round of shows we're recording after this. But just a reminder to everybody, if you want to subscribe to this show on iTunes, just you can head right over to iTunes and do a search for the DCL show, or you can find links to do that along with our show notes and our other shows on DizUnplugged.com. So yeah, we just came back from a 4-night sailing on board the Disney Dream. It was Sean, myself, Denny, and my mom, Madeline. We do have some videos that will be going up shortly. From those, we did a whole thing on Embarkation. So we kind of get into more of the details on Embarkation in that video. But I thought we'd do an overview of the cruise and what we thought. And I'm going to start with Embarkation.
Okay.
We went to the Welcome Center, the Dreams Unlimited Travel Welcome Center, which is in Cape Canaveral, about a mile from the port. Stop in and say hello. We filmed some stuff there. And then FL Tours, who's one of our official sponsors, they will do a 30-minute stop at the Welcome Center and then take you over to the port. We went over, and we got to the port about, 12:30?
Yep.
Now, I'm Platinum, and so is Denny.
Yay.
She's Platinum
This
now?
is my first time checking in as Platinum.
And Platinum gets to check in with Concierge.
Yep.
And I believe that's DVC as well, too, now.
Okay.
I think.
That's what I understand.
And so, there was this line to check in that was pretty long. Now, it goes fast. They've got a lot of open bays to check people in. But for Platinum, Concierge, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it was DVC too, but I could be wrong on that. I know DVC has its own check-in area. I thought it was there, but it's kind of in the back, off to the side, never a line or very, very short line. So we checked in right away. So that was perk number 1 of being Platinum.
Yeah.
Perk number 2 of being Platinum is you're given boarding group 1. So when you check in, they give you a boarding group. They say, okay, you're going to board with group 18. So you have to wait for them to call 18 before you go and check in. Mm-hmm. Or before you go and get onto the ship. So we were boarding group 1. So pretty much as soon as we checked in,
On the ship you go.
on the ship we went. From the time we got to the port till the time we were sitting in Animator's Palette having our welcome aboard lunch was about an hour. Mm-hmm. And I think, and it would have been less had we not stopped to record.
It was less than that because so I have time-stamped photos of being in the parking lot at 12:23. We were sitting down in Animator's Palette at 1:06. That's insane.
Wow. Yeah. So it was less than 40 minutes.
Insane.
And again, Platinum. That does matter.
Yeah.
That does matter. If you're, silver or gold, I mean, it's been so long since I've been silver or gold.
Just did it last year. It's not bad at all. They give you a port arrival time to help kind of mediate that a little bit, to spread the group out. If you're sailing on the newer ships, either the Fantasy or the Dream, it can kind of get a little bit more crowded. And it's not as much fun to wait for your boarding group when you're on the newer ships, because it's just more people than with the classic ships. You're not going to find a seat to sit down in necessarily with the bigger ships, but they try to expedite the lines as quickly as possible. They do a really
good
nice
job.
I ignore my port arrival time almost every single time.
Right?
No, I'm only gold still, and sometimes when I'm like on a cruise with Disney or with Corey, Corey's platinum, so I get on instantly. Or if it's with Disney, they make sure we get on. But when I've not done it with them and I'm by myself, I'm the main one on there. I'm not telling you to ignore the time, but inevitably,
don't ignore the time.
Yeah, don't.
There's a reason they give it.
But if you do, for some reason, if you're in a position where this is the only time I can get there, or I'm going to be later, every single time I've been able to walk on still pretty much maybe within 10 minutes of when I've actually shown up.
Now, Mike, I know you've sailed on the Dream a few times.
Yes.
What's your embarkation experience has been?
It was pretty smooth. Most of the times that I've taken it, we've done the Disney transfer, so you get there after most of the people have already gotten on. So I mean, very similar to your experience. We were on through security and on within about 20 minutes, but that was because we were probably the last one I was on, at least. We were the last transfer from Walt Disney World there. So we got on. Our rooms were ready. We went straight to the room and straight to the muster drill. So
Right.
It was really quick.
So, and just one thing that definitely expedites boarding. Do your online check-in before you leave.
Yes.
And do it a good several days before. Make sure all your information is in there. Have the piece of paper, your check-in piece of paper with the barcode right there. Mm-hmm. Have your documents ready, present. It's a good idea. Have one person in a family have all the documents. Mm-hmm. Passports or birth certificates with a raised seal. That's an important thing. It must be a birth certificate with a raised seal. Are acceptable forms of identification when you're getting on the ship. Have all of that stuff together. And God bless my mother, 89 years old, woman still has her original birth certificate.
Love it.
It's a pain in the ass to carry around because it's chiseled on stone, but she had it.
Love her.
I know, she's amazing. And these are the jokes I tell her. So I tell her this. I tell her her social security number is 16. So on the ship, lunch at Animator's Palette, which was unremarkable for me. We're not going to do a review of it, but there are options. You can go up to Cabanas, and we're going to talk about Cabanas in a second. Unless you enjoy chaos and anxiety, do not go to Cabanas on Embarkation.
That's what I was going to say.
And that's why, because we had the option. We could do Animators or we could do Cabanas. And I was like, oh no, we're doing Animators. Yeah. I'm not dealing with that.
Cabanas is always a zoo.
And this is one of my complaints. This is one of my complaints about, and it's not just on the Dream, it's on all of them with Cabanas. I think they've done a great job with the food and the variety of food available at Cabanas. Unfortunately, it's like the Hunger Games because it is lines going in different directions. You've got people. You're trying to carry your food to a table, and it's like it's like an obstacle course. And you got kids cutting in front of you, and people stopping in front of you, and one person going this way, one person going that way. It's how are they not organizing the flow of traffic? They're Disney, for God's sakes. It's not like they don't have, 70, 60 plus years experience managing crowds and lines, and yet they can't seem to do that in Cabanas. So at any point in time, breakfast, especially at breakfast, I think it's the worst. Breakfast and lunch on sea days in Cabanas. So and I had my mom with me, 89, she still gets around, but she has a walker. I avoided Cabanas like the plague. Because, the one time we did go in, it was get her right to a table. and tell me. I kind of know what she wants, but I asked her, "Did you see anything she wanted?" Then I go make her plate and bring it to her, because there was no way, none whatsoever, that woman was going to be able to navigate that buffet. None.
Unless it's later in the morning. We were
right.
able to later in the morning. We were getting there at like 10 one morning, the second morning.
But you got to cut it close, because they stop serving at like 10:30.
You do.
10:30 or 11. So, let's talk about the staterooms. Now, Sean and I and Mom had a connecting stateroom. So, and we were in a 6B. So, and I found nothing in the stateroom that was objectionable. It was very nice. I think they're a little smaller, aren't they? Are they? It felt smaller to me, but then again, I've gained weight, so everything feels smaller to me. So
yeah, they're around like 240,
245,
241, 245.
Aren't some of them like 299? Those are the family suites.
The family suites can get up there in size. So yeah, I mean, these are definitely on the smaller end for the Disney ships, but they're not on the small end as far as general cruising goes, because some other cruise lines just go down as low as like 150, 169 square feet per room.
Well, you get that, but you get that on the inside stateroom. I mean, inside staterooms on Disney,
the
you can get
smallest
down
with
to
Disney's about 169.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, they can get pretty tiny, just depending on our rooms were actually already ready once we got on the ship. I get on the ship late. I never get on the ship before rooms are ready. I try to get there around 2:30. That's my goal time.
Well, I have my routine though. So like, get on the ship, get stuff in the room if I can, if it's ready. Go up to the spa, make whatever appointments I want to make, because I don't make them in advance very often, because usually A, they don't book up. B, I'm not sure what I want until I get on the ship. And, have lunch and stuff like that, and then have a little breathing room between doing all that and the muster drill. Mm-hmm. So for those who may not be familiar, the muster drill is required by law of all ships in the departing from the United States. This is where you have to go to an assembly station, which is where you would go in the event there was an emergency and they needed to evacuate the ship. So it's kind of like a dry run, showing you where to meet, what to bring, explaining how to put on your life vest. You don't have to bring your life vest with you, but they explain all that stuff, and it is required. If you don't go, they will come and find you. They will come and find you, and they will make you do it. They will make you do it, and you get a nasty letter from the captain and all this other stuff. So
just go.
Doesn't matter how many times you've cruised. Doesn't matter how. I mean, like I said, I've cruised so many times. I could conduct a muster drill, but I have to go, and they're going to scan you in and make sure you're there.
Yep.
But then once the muster drill is done, your cruise actually begins.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the work is done, and your cruise can actually begin. So
the muster drill on the Dream felt, out of the cruises I've been on, a little different.
It was disorganized.
It was a bit like I just needed to find. Usually, crew members in yellow are everywhere, because I was trying to find my muster drill station, and it's funny because there is a thread in the DCL forum right now about muster station O and P being in the tube and in evolution on the Dream and the Fantasy. How, hey, heads up, that's where this is, because it was really hard to figure out where in the world are O and P.
And again, I've got my 89-year-old mother with me, and we're trying to figure out where we're going, and there were no cast members. Nope. Nobody was around. It was weird. And then when we did find out where to go, they made us line up in a hallway outside of Evolution.
Really?
Okay, we were lined up in a hallway, and we kept getting conflicting orders. Doors were closed, right? They weren't letting people in. And they said, okay, assembly station O on the right and P on the left. And then somebody else would come along and say, no, you're on the wrong side. P on the right and O on the left. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting out there. It's like 5 minutes to the drill. And I opened the door, because I was getting pissed off now. Mm-hmm. And I opened the door to Evolution, and there are all the cast members just kind of standing around chatting. And I said, you realize you've got a crowd of people out here, right? Oh, yes, we'll be letting you in shortly. So it wasn't until the alarm sounded that they actually let us in to sit down and to assemble where we needed to assemble. And it just felt like nobody was in place. And this is the first time I've ever seen it. It doesn't happen on Disney. But it made me concerned. That and something else that happened later in the cruise made me concerned that things on the Dream may be a little looser than they are on other ships. But when it comes to the muster station stuff, you can't screw around with that. So that was a big ding from me on this sailing about that. Don't screw around with the safety. Don't screw around with safety. And when you're trying to coordinate sending 4,000 people to different sections of the ship at the same time, make sure you have crew members out there, obvious, directing traffic, because that was not the case on this sailing.
And it was so atypical of what the drill normally is. It was a little unnerving not to be able to ask a question of someone when I needed to ask a question. It was different.
Now let's talk about the dining. It was a 4-night. We got to do Royal Palace one night. We got to do Animators one night. We did Palo and we did Remy. Let's talk about main dining rooms though, because Remy and Palo are separate reviews. I got to tell you, so far for me, any of the other cruise lines I have been on, nobody is matching where the food is right now in the main dining rooms on Disney. A lot of times other cruise lines will dumb down the food in the main dining room to encourage you to spend the extra money and the upcharge to go into their specialty dining locations. Disney is doing the opposite. As a matter of fact, we found that the quality between Royal Palace and Palo was a lot closer than you would think, to the point where it makes us question whether or not the $40 for Palo is really worth it. But what was your opinion overall food-wise?
Oh, I thought the food was great. I've always loved, I like Cabanas options as far as them having lots of shrimp, lots of crab. I love that. Those are extra touches. Obviously, it doesn't make it fully worth the extra price for Disney just for that, but that's not something you're going to get on other cruise lines. They're not going to offer you unlimited shrimp and crab and all this kind of stuff on their regular lunch buffet. That's usually stuff you have to pay extra
And you said
for.
it was very fresh, too.
It was very fresh. It was very good. They had mussels as well, which I don't care that much about. But for people who do, it's great. They had amazing salad bar that had tons of options, tons of fresh vegetables on it. As far as the restaurants went, I mean, I didn't have any meals that were bad. I didn't think Animator's Palette was that great compared to Royal Palace, but it still is a better experience than what I find at the free restaurants on other cruise lines. And the service is always great. They always do a good variety of having a good variety of options. They always have like an Indian style dish. They always have a vegetarian dish. They always have their mainstays as well that are consistently good. And then they have the dining that changes for each restaurant, and that's always a big positive.
The rotational dining on Disney is phenomenal. It is something I don't think any other cruise line does, where you rotate from one restaurant to another, and your server team goes with you. So you have the same server team the entire cruise. And people get very attached to their server teams.
Yeah.
And they request those server teams. And, you know...
Been there, done that.
Yeah. I usually find in the dining rooms, usually the server teams are very good. Had, guys that were, or servers that were a little off sometimes, but generally speaking, very good. It's always been the hit or miss for me is always going to be with the head server. Sometimes you get really good head servers, and sometimes you get jerks. And this time we had an amazing head server, and I posted something on the DCL fan Facebook group while we were on the ship. Of the head server came over, introduced himself. This is the first night in Royal Palace. And was talking to all of us and talking to my mom. And not, in no condescension whatsoever, was just talking to my mother. And without missing a beat, while he's talking to my mother, he picks up her fork and her knife and begins cutting her chicken. And I'm watching this. And I'm like, okay, that That's incredible. That's just, you know what? That's awesome. It was just this little touch. It was this little touch that I was like, okay, that's Disney. Old Disney. We talk about you want old school Disney service the way it used to be back in the day in the parks, you go on cruise line.
I guess I have a question for y'all about that. Or really, Denny would be a good one to answer for this. I have done 2 cruises since joining the Diz that were like where I went with Pete or with stuff for work. I have done them where I went with my own family since starting at the Diz, and I have never had the head server come over really and do anything or talk to us or any of that kind of stuff. I have had it where, like this time he came over the first day when Pete and I did the Alaska cruise on the Wonder. He came over the first day. Whereas, 2 years ago I did the Magic. We did a 7-night. He came over once halfway through when it was time to give reviews and let us know who he was, and then he came back the last night when it was time to give tips.
Yep.
So, and that's the only time I've seen them.
You see
and
that a lot.
The one before, whenever I went with my family and wasn't part of this, I never saw a head server the entire time until the very last night when it was time to tip. He came over and was like, by the way, I was your head server, just so you know.
Yeah,
or
just so you know who you're tipping right now.
Hello.
Now, from what I understand, I could be wrong on this, but I've heard conflicting reports. When you do the prepaid gratuities and they're in your stateroom the last full night of your cruise or the night before the last full night, and you tear them off and you put them in the envelopes, I've heard conflicting reports on this, but I've heard it said that if you don't give them, that they have to, in order to get that tip, they have to present that stub.
Oh.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but I've had head servers where I've gone to guest services and specifically said, take that tip off. This man only showed up the very last night of the cruise to get his tip. He never introduced himself. If they don't introduce themselves on a 7-night cruise, if they don't introduce themselves within the first 2 nights, don't tip them. Don't tip them.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be, if there's anything wrong, he's supposed to make sure that everything goes right. But if you don't know who he is, because there's several in every dining room, right? They have stations. There's several head servers in every dining room. So if he hasn't introduced himself, and there's a problem, especially if you want your table changed or something that the servers can't do, your head server needs to do that.
Denny, do you feel like before working here? I mean,
yes.
You did 10 before here, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we've had a couple recently on our family cruises that have gone above and beyond. On lobster night, they'll come and help you get the lobster tail out of its shell, that kind of thing. My understanding is with the head server, a lot of times he will suggest wine pairings for the meal. And so since we don't personally drink, we haven't had that interaction with the head server in the past. So back in the day, yes, absolutely. We would go, and who are we tipping right now?
Who is this? Yeah.
But most recently, they have started to make themselves known a little bit more. We have a favorite server that who did that for my father-in-law. I was telling you guys on the cruise, who my father-in-law is a stroke survivor and doesn't have use of his right side like he used to. And so the first night on our first cruise, we walked into the restaurant, and this amazing server, without missing a beat, same with Sudhir, our head server this past week, started cutting my father-in-law's meat. And it was just such a blessing for my mom-in-law, who is full-time caregiver and helper for him, to not have to worry about that. So Sampong on the Magic, we love him and have requested him over and over again. But back in the day, absolutely, a head server would be kind of off in the ephemera.
It was 6 to 5 in Pick'em as to whether or not they were going to introduce themselves. On this cruise, I will say that
he was great.
Very positive things to say about the food and the service.
Yep.
Let's talk about entertainment. Oh, Mike, let's bring you into your experience with food on the Dream.
For the most part, good. I enjoy the food at Enchanted Garden. The menu has always intrigued me. I hate the decor. I'd rather have that menu anywhere else except where I feel like I'm in my grandmother's garden. I don't like the decor there. But other than that, food has always been wonderful. Cabanas is like I said, a zoo all the time. And my service generally has been really good. I've had hit or miss times with the head server. as well. I had one time when our server became ill, so we had like a fill-in server, and they were doing like double duty, so it wasn't a super great experience, but we didn't fault them because they were covering multiple areas, and we did not see the head server that night, where I would have expected you're down someone.
Right.
What's going on? Yeah. So other than that, it's always been a good experience overall.
All right. What?
Hold on.
What? Did I miss something? Okay. I hate that. All right. So, in the interest of time, let's move on and talk about entertainment.
Yeah.
Specifically, the stage shows. Specifically, on the Dream, it's Beauty and the Beast. And I got to tell you something. You hear me say, don't throw around Broadway caliber or Broadway style with this stuff, because it's not. And for those of us who have done Broadway shows, we know it's not. And you look stupid. Not the case with Beauty and the Beast. That was a Broadway caliber, not style. It was a Broadway caliber show they performed. The cast, any one of them could have been on Broadway. I mean, incredible singing voices, fantastic, just fantastic. But the technology and the way they did the sets, I'm like, this is a level beyond. And it's sad because you have that. And then you have the Golden Mickeys, which is cringeworthy and terrible. And they're terrible not because the cast is any different, right? The cast is talented, period, full stop. It's these shows that are no good, in my opinion. Now, I realize I'm not necessarily the core audience for this, right? It's for kids. But I'm sorry, you're charging double what the cruise next to you is charging at Port Canaveral? One of the places that needs to be evident is in the entertainment. And a lot of the shows on these ships have been around for years, and they look it and they feel it, and there's no energy in them because these people have been doing the same crap over and over again since Jesus was in the cast. And I just think it bothers me. The Golden Mickeys bothers me. That it's that bad and it's that kitschy, and do something new. You have the talent. You're Disney, for God's sakes. You have Disney theatrical, for God's sakes. You have the intellectual properties. Do something better.
I mean, I don't find anything particularly wrong with the Golden Mickeys.
No, it's awful.
I don't think it's the greatest show I've ever seen, but like, I like the concept and the style, like what they're doing. But I also am used to shows on other cruise lines, and they're completely unwatchable. So like, I find Golden Mickey's unwatchable. There's very little talent or anything on the other ones, where it's like they make those, or you see on like American Idol, they're like, it was very cruise line performance, and it's not got a good synonymous name. So the lowest of the low on Disney is still better than a lot of other stuff, except some like the Oasis ships on Royal. I know they have like Rent and stuff that they'll do, or
they have the Broadway touring companies,
and they do really well on those. But there's, for the most part, Disney does them better.
Now, for the longest time, I wouldn't do entertainment, the shows on the ship, because of how I feel about them. But then you said, no, we really got to see Frozen. We were on the Wonder in Alaska. Got to go see Frozen. So we did that. And I'm like, oh my God, this was incredible. Okay, right. So maybe it is a new day. Then the next time we saw the Golden Mickeys, I'm like, nope,
yeah.
Not.
The shame of it is, sorry, Mike. The shame of it, I think, is that because of the performers being so good, it must be disheartening to them that now that Disney Cruise Line has so many repeat visitors that want to come over and over again. The last time I was in the Golden Mickeys, pretty much the bottom floor middle was filled, not to capacity, but pretty well filled. And then the aisles on the lower part, you could sit anywhere from top to back. So they're playing for these half theaters on these short cruises because it's a lot of people who are repeats. And it's like, they can see into the audience. How, where do they find the motivation to go forward when people aren't even showing up anymore?
But I think it has to be demoralizing to know for these cast members that they can perform a show like Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
and then they're asked to do some of this other stuff that is basically just garbage. And that's got to be demoralizing. Mike, you look like you want to jump in.
And I was going to say, with what they've done with Beauty and the Beast, there is absolutely no reason that Golden Mickeys believe those are in the state that they are. Like, even if they don't want to change the show, they want to keep it the Golden Mickeys, infuse a little bit of the new technology in it and bring it into, even 2019, 2018 at this point, because it definitely feels like an early 2000s show.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing really redeeming about it anymore.
All right. So just in the interest of time, because we have more shows we have to do after this, so I got to move this along a little bit. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap is Debarkation. Because if the muster drill was disorganized, Debarkation was a complete and utter joke. It was a complete joke. I'm going to be honest with you. The feeling I had was, we got your money, now get out. Because there was no organization whatsoever. The atrium was jam-packed with people, lines going in all sorts of directions. Take Cabanas and pump it on steroids. And that was the kind of fiasco, no pun intended there to Corey, that you had going on in the atrium. Again, I'm trying to navigate this with my 89-year-old mother. We're trying to get down to Enchanted Garden, which is on deck 2. And it's deck 2 midship, and we were aft. And you can't go down to deck 2 and walk through from there. In fact, you can't walk through anywhere pretty much we were on deck 5. So there's a lot of going down and going up and going down, and it's another problem I have with the design of the new ships. But I had to navigate my mother through that. Plus, we have our carry-on luggage.
Right.
And we're trying to get through just to get to an elevator, and it was a zoo. No organization whatsoever. No one. It would be one thing if they were trying to organize it and people weren't listening. There was no organization at all. And there's no excuse for that. None whatsoever. None. And that was a big, big negative for me. Because that's the last thing you remember when you leave the ship.
Yeah.
And the feeling I walked off with was, while you're spending money, we're going to give you great service and the food's going to be great, but now that we're done, we can't get any more money out of you, just go. And I know that's not their intention. I know that, but that's how it felt. That's how it felt, and that's how it feels when you fail that miserably at Debarkation on a cruise ship. I've seen Disney handle Debarkation brilliantly on most sailings I've been on. This was like nothing I've seen before. So I don't know if this is a localized failure on the Dream.
It's not. The last two sailings we've had, so yes, the Dream, but also the Fantasy before it, you are waiting all the way, the line snakes all the way down toward Animator's Palette. I've been down at Animator's Palette, waiting in line, waiting for that line to move. It's huge, and it is kind of like, everything was so magical, and this is an abrupt, hard stop.
And I think maybe the reason I haven't seen it before is because the last few times I've sailed on Disney, we've been in concierge, and on Debarkation Day they take you right out. Right, you don't wait in any lines. You just go down. That's one of the reasons you're paying like 17 times the money. But so this was a real rude awakening for me.
Yeah, I think after 2 bad debarkation days, that's when I officially switched. I don't care how inconvenient it is for me, because most of the time I'm traveling with no one else, just adults without kids. So I do not put my stuff out the night before. I take my stuff out, and I'm one of the first people off the ship at 6:30, 7 a.m. when they let you go, because I would rather just get off with no issues, get through security and everything, and have the rest of my happy day to myself than deal with the nonsense that ends up happening.
This was my very first time doing it this way. The first trip I did, it was I I guess we'd say a sea and land package, because Disney was there to take us to Walt Disney World after. So that was a different experience. And then, a couple years ago, I did it with the Magic. It was out of New York, but everyone just took their bags off. And that's how I've always done it with every cruise. I never have used porters or anything like that. And then Pete and I did concierge for Alaska last year. So this was the first time I left a bag outside and let them take it off. If I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't do it. I don't like it. I don't like giving them my bag. I'd rather get off at 6:30 when they open the door and they're like, if you want to carry your stuff, and you can leave. Mm-hmm. And it's way more convenient to do it that way. It gets a little more complicated if you're using Disney transfers or you're using some of these different elements, because you can't just leave and get in your car or anything that way. But yeah, Debarkation's a mess on Disney. And even compared to other cruise lines, Disney's is a mess, for sure.
Okay. What do they do on other cruise lines?
Other cruise lines, they're really good about giving you numbers and saying, group 1 can leave, group 2. So the same way with the boarding for Disney, they just do it with deboarding. And so they're pretty good about, like, if you don't have that number, you need to stay above the debarkation deck. So you can be up on the buffet deck or anywhere you need to be, as long as you're out of your room and you're not down there, so they can make it as smooth of a process as they can. So, I mean, it still gets messy, but like, they do at least have some order to it. Whereas with Disney, they do give out the luggage tags like, oh, you're Pluto or whatever, but it's really just, that's where you can find your bag whenever you get off the ship.
Yeah.
It's not really an order.
No.
So, I mean, overall, we had a wonderful time. My mother had a wonderful time. I think we all enjoyed it. I mean, we were working pretty hard, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Overall, but there were some things I saw where on my last 2 sailings on the Wonder, I referred to them as flawless, and they were. This wasn't flawless, but it was still fantastic. But instead of maybe what would be a 9.8, because I'll never give anything a solid 10, maybe this I'm going to give an 8 to, because of the inconsistency in Palo, the disorganization when it came to the muster drill, and certainly a big chunk of it is the debarkation process and how bad it failed. What do you think? What would you give it?
I'd probably give it about an 8.5. I loved Castaway Cay. I thought they did a great job of cleaning up since the hurricane. The food was great. I had a good experience. The muster station, it was kind of messy at the beginning. It didn't bother me very much. And I love that Disney puts people inside for theirs. A lot of other cruise lines, you're outside.
Sometimes.
Yeah, there are some
There's a lot of the muster drills that are on deck.
Oh, gotcha.
Plenty of
Okay.
them.
I've always been inside for Disney, so I've never had an outside one.
This is, I think, the second time I've been inside.
I would ding them on the fact that other cruise lines, they have green letters all over the ship that are constantly on the sides of everything that say, the letter K or the letter M, so you always know where you're going. I never have to ask where my thing is.
On deck they do. I didn't see them.
But not,
They didn't have
not
them for us,
inside.
yeah.
And usually when you get close to them on other cruise lines, they are the green ones that are inside as well, that at least direct you somewhere on where to go. So we were really, we're like, okay, we have O and that means nothing to me. So where could this be?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would be right at an 8.5. I agree with Castaway. Pete, you asked about the erosion,
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
beach
talk about
on
that.
Serenity Bay. It looks better than I thought it was going to be looking, because
But they still have lost a lot.
Yes,
of
they
beach.
have. They've lost a lot of beach. I talked to a crew member who said that they've been trying to bring in sand to really bolster that. That's looking a lot stronger right now than it had been. There was even a sailing recently where you couldn't go on Serenity Bay.
Yeah.
Because it was so bad, the erosion was so bad. So, I would land it right at an 8.5.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's our take on the Disney Dream, our recent sailing. Thanks everybody for being with us. Just a reminder, if you are interested in booking a vacation with either Sean Falk or Mike Finucci, there'll be a link in the show notes to their direct agent pages on dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. And that'll do it. Thanks for being with us, folks. We'll see you next week with another edition of the Disney Cruise Line Show. Have a great week.